picture a cable machine in your gym, one of the ones where there's kind of two stations and it's connected somewhat, but two people can use it. On the left side, we have the gym rat. He's distracted by the loud music in his headphones. He struggles with tricep pushdowns. He chooses a weight that's way too heavy for him to handle with good form and has a jerky motion where he's just slamming it down and trying to use momentum. There's people around and they're actually filming him. They actually see how bad his form is, and they've actually got their camera and they're trying to subtly record his form. They're laughing and they're just almost making fun of him. On the right side of the cable machine is a completely different guy, a polar opposite. We have Anatoly. Anatoly has a chiseled physique. His triceps are absolutely huge, and his tricep pushdowns are beautiful. It's like a knife through butter. It's so smooth. The form is impeccable and the weight is controlled. Each repetition is deliberate, he's moving with intention, and it's perfect. I was doing tricep pushdowns once and slam. Right next to me, a guy had been doing a lighter weight than me, may I add, but he'd been doing his pushdowns and he'd been doing it with such bad form, with such a heavy weight which he couldn't control, that he had let go of it because of how heavy it was, and it had gone all the way up to the top of the cable machine. It almost hit me in the process. It slammed into it, made an awfully loud noise, and he laughed it off. Him and his friends laughed it off. They didn't really see it as something that was bad. They almost saw it as a cool gym experience, like, haha, we just did that. No, they're doing half the weight of me, and they're pulling stuff like this. Can you imagine it hit me just because of their carelessness? I don't think I was even properly there. I was on like a guest pass because it wasn't my usual gym. What do I get out of that? What sort of liability have I signed away by having that pass? Sure, maybe I can make a case that their recklessness maybe entitles me to some sort of compensation, but likely no. Because of their idiocracy, I could have got seriously injured. Now here's an actionable step, because I want you guys to be training your triceps right. And I'm going to sit here and make sure that you never put anyone else at risk when you're exercising. You never almost hit people, and alongside that, you actually get the best gains of your life. So, small actionable step. Sit up straight and visualize these two stations, the cable machine. We have the gym rat and we have Anatoly. Now think about it. Which one do you want to be? You want to be Anatoly. You want to copy what he's doing and you want to get his results. So I want you to actually practice the motion of a tricep pushdown with your arms. Be very deliberate and intentful on your motions. It can be quick. It can be a quick pushdown, but the eccentric has to be controlled. Practice it. Do a couple reps on that. Really emphasize your form. It needs to be identical every single rep. And then make a mental note, or even write it down, or put it on your notes app. Make it your background. I don't care. Have it say, aim for Anatoly's precision. Mastery trumps showmanship. See, the common misconception when it comes to training arms is seeking a sensation, trying to get a pump, rather than actually progressing in weight and having good form and going to failure. And you see this a lot because people believe that they need to feel a really good contraction in the arm, whether that be when they're training their biceps or their triceps, although specifically today we're talking about the triceps. And obviously the pump is something very visual and you can see it. I mean, how many guys do you see training their arms when they look in the mirror? Like, they're not even focusing on the movement. They're focusing on viewing the movement. Imagine being a spectator when you're in something. Like, imagine an athlete and he's doing a race and he's viewing like the spectator TV, whatever, like the big screen, and he's viewing his own race. No, that's not what athletes do. How are they supposed to be in the zone? How are they supposed to be in the flow state? How are they supposed to achieve and push themselves to their limits when they're not even in the driver's seats? They're an observer. Imagine how ridiculous that is. You wouldn't see a guy in Gran Turismo, whatever it's called, watching it on his phone whilst he's in the car. Like, no, every single action requires your 100% focus. And this pump, what does this pump achieve? It's cool, you can take some photos, but if you really wanted to take some amazing photos, you could get a better pump doing something else. You could have a literal pump session to get the coolest photos, the craziest photos of your life. But that's not why you're training. You're not training for the pump, you're training for the muscle growth. And this misconception, this prevention of actually going up in weight and training hard just because you're trying to feel it, for you to actually feel an exercise when you first start off, it means you have to have a weight which is so much lighter than you can actually handle. And that allows you to kind of like focus on the fibers and the contraction and actually feeling everything and like squeezing through the range. How's that going to grow? I promise you, when you get bigger and you get stronger, you'll be able to feel the sensation just because there's more muscle to work with. You've been doing it for so long, the connections are so strong in your central nervous system. But for now, we don't have to care about that sensation. It doesn't mean anything, so why would we target something like that when it's going to sacrifice our progress and sacrifice our gains? It's ridiculous. I'm progressing in weight. And I know you might notice that earlier I was talking about people doing too heavy weight and not controlling it. That's the thing. Of course, form comes first. Form has to be perfect. Form has to be perfect. Like we even did the actionable step. We visualized what form is supposed to be like. You have to get strong to grow. You have to get strong by doing it properly. But it's also a case of your form isn't going to be perfect at first. You have to be very intentful and deliberate. But the first time you write a story, it's not going to be perfect, is it? It's going to be kind of trash, let's be real. And yet, to get better at writing stories, you don't write sentences. You write stories because it has to go together. It's the same where to get better at exercise, you have to do your form at a weight that's actually challenging you. Because if you're focusing on the light weight when you're doing the form, you're not even pushing yourself. Form breakdown occurs when you get to those really difficult reps. And if you're not getting to the difficult reps, how can you ensure you're maintaining good form? It's ridiculous, right? And progressive overload matters. We need to do heavy things and we need to keep doing heavier things. We need to train to failure. We need to manage our recovery in a way which means we're consistently doing better. None of the things I used to do where I just go in, do like 50 sets of everything, barely push myself, come out feeling accomplished, but feeling like awful because I just wasted so many hours of my life depleting energy doing almost cardio instead of actually challenging a muscle. Like, come on, guys, you gotta be deliberate and you gotta really think about the sort of goals you're trying to do here. But it's not just about progressive overload, because that's only one piece of the puzzle, right? So we have training intensity and then we have exercise selection. And exercise selection with the triceps is going to be a little bit of a confusing thing, right? Because people talk about having free heads, but in reality, the free heads are kind of like two. We can kind of only bias one, and it kind of has a lot to do with our kind of arm angles. So when our arms like this, we're able to bias the long head, which is actually the most underdeveloped part of someone's tricep. And it's also great because it targets the part of the arm that makes up the biggest amount. It's the bottom bit, the really, really incredible thing. And I'm sure if you look at a photo of a famous bodybuilder, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That long head is super important, and yours probably sucks. So you need to have at least one exercise targeting your long head each time you do it. And I would give this 2 sets. And with that sort of thing there, we can do something like a single arm extension. We can do 2 ropes where it's properly being able to split, and so that we're actually able to get a really good stretch. And at the bottom, we can't be limited. We can't have it coming in like a rope push down where we're kind of doing like this. We need to make sure that we're maintaining that position so our long head can actually have the best leverage to move the weight, which is the goal when we're trying to bias ahead, right? And now the rest of your tricep, honestly, we can do anything. Of course, when it comes to movement, things with more stability is going to be better, but anything will target the tricep and enough. And of course, you can never like take the long head out of it, so it'll still be worked with these other movements. But with the other movements like tricep pushdowns or, extensions or whatever it may be, we're going to be working the rest of our heads. And that's going to get bigger and better. And it's that simple, man. It really is that simple. That's the missing key most people have. And that's probably the reason why a lot of triceps are lagging that I see. You guys have to remember, anyone telling you got to use light weights and you got to feel it. And there's so many influencers I see doing this, and they're just leading you astray. They're leading you down a rabbit hole so they can sell you supplements because you're not progressing. Like I'm pretty sure that's 100% what they're doing. Because chasing the pump does nothing. And when they sell their pre-workout, they're selling pump enhancers. And so it gives you a trick that you're kind of getting better. I know you guys, you're going to sit here and you're going to be like, man, if I can't feel the burn, how am I going to be able to work my triceps effectively? You don't have to feel the burn. The burn doesn't matter. The burn is just a sign that you're damaging your muscle, that there's lactic acid building up in it. That doesn't matter. That's not something that causes growth, is it? If it was, then we'd want to be chasing that, and it's not. And you also might be talking about how you love the pump. But we know we don't need the pump. Let's be a bit humble for a second. Training to failure with good form and a controlled eccentric will create a pump better than anything. I know you guys aren't training like that, unless you're based, and I hope we're going to get you to that point. But when you're doing that, the pumps are going to be so good anyway. When you start watching some more of my videos and you learn about how to plan your pre-workout meal or how to have some intra-workout electrolytes, when you kind of add on these extra little tidbits of knowledge, your pumps are going to get better anyway. So we don't have to pump train. We don't have to focus on doing like 50 reps just because it makes our arms a little bit bigger because of the blood flow. Like, come on, guys. So here's a so I'm going to give you a 5-step full plan of action for you. So the first step is going to be picking stable movements. If you're doing exercises which are kind of like standing and doing like, I don't know, something like that or something like that, and you don't have really anything to stabilize on, we're not going to get the same amount of growth as like if we were focusing on one part at once and we were holding the cable machine to ensure that we're not really moving anywhere, or if we were locked in where it's kind of a bit gross, but you've seen some people doing like overhead extensions and they use that like butt crack to kind of sandwich themselves in. I would never do that. I've actually done that, so I don't know why I said that. But these are sort of things we can do to add stability to the movement, or even just balancing ourselves by doing 2 at once. All of these are really great ways to provide extra stability, which will lead to being able to push yourself harder and move more weight and build more muscle. And it also helps minimize injury risks. You can kind of imagine something jerky having a higher potential to tear or strain a joint or something like that. And step 2 is going to be so much more important than that one. It's actually self-assessment. I preach this so often. You don't know how good your form is until you film it. And if you're not filming yourself in the gym, if you're not feeling occasional sets and trying to work out if you're doing it properly, maybe your long head bias is you're actually kind of bringing the elbows in when you're doing a movement. Maybe it's not staying at the same place. You gotta do these things because you can't trust the mirror. And if you're using the mirror, you're not in it, right? You're not in the driver's seat. And how are you supposed to gauge how well your form is if you're not actually in the driver's seat? Because you're a spectator. You know what you're supposed to be doing when you're a spectator. Because every time you watch a football game, what are you thinking? Oh, they should do that. They should do this. They should do this. And yet they're not doing it because they're in the driver's seat. They're the players. And the players will do something automatically. They won't even think. The decisions made in the flow state are so autonomous that I don't think it even goes to our brain. It's literally just feedback, a very, very short circuit to have instant reactions. That's the sort of thing that's going to be happening, and you have to be the spectator after. You cannot trust yourself in the moment. Also humble yourself. Are you actually getting to failure? Are you actually doing a heavy enough weight? If you're getting to high reps, you need to move it up. And that leads into kind of the next step, which is talking about heavy weights. So step 3, you got to be heavy, but you got to be right? So you're always increasing the weight. This is basic progressive overload. But progressive overload is something which I hate because it almost suggests like that's what's making us stronger. That's what's making us have more muscle. And that's not really true, is it? Because progressive overload allows us to keep the same sort of stimulus, which provides more muscle. And we only have to progressively overload because we have more muscle, because we're getting stronger. It's not something that causes it. It's something which accommodates an environment to grow more. And so as we get heavier, make sure the form is good. And so as we get heavier, you cannot compromise your form. I don't care if you think you're going to get more gains out of cheating, out of swaying a little, because then you'll be able to finish the rep. That's not how it works. If you can't finish the rep, you do the controlled eccentric, and then you try and do a partial, and you do a controlled eccentric. The second you start jerking, we're not able to actually work out how many reps. Like, when do we stop counting? When we start cheating more? Do we progressively cheat as things go along? That doesn't actually allow us, lengthened partials are so important, and if we're doing cheat reps, we're not able to do those lengthened partials. We're changing the movement in a way where it's completely different, and then we're actually going to get less out of it, because we're not going past failure. We're not going to a place where we're getting more growth because of the failing in different positions of the movement. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that doesn't actually move quite seamlessly into the next point, but step 4 is just as important as everything else if you actually want to get bigger triceps, and that's you've got to target the long head. You have to incorporate movements that bias that. You have to incorporate movements that bias that head, because if you don't, it's going to suck. Your triceps just aren't going to get that. I'm going to be completely honest. There is no way to get around it. You have to bias the long head. Saving the most important point for last is review and adjust. You should be continually reassessing your tricep training to make sure that the weight is properly dialed in. You should be continually reassessing your training, whether that's moving an exercise out because you've kind of had it in for too long and you're not really progressing on it. You've kind of plateaued on that for a bit because there's no longer a novel stimulus. You can switch it out for something else, or maybe reassessing your footage, making sure you're actually training properly, maybe humbling yourself and thinking we should go heavier, we should really push it. Like, how can we micro load? Is there any way we can get the plates from the dumbbell section, or maybe we can get the plates from the yoga section or whatever, what exercises can I do? What exercises can I throw in? Can I go to Fletcher's channel? Can I find something new? And whenever you can, seek external feedback, because 2 eyes is better than 1. But of course, with this sort of external feedback, make sure it's someone who knows their stuff. Because if you are someone who doesn't know as much as you, they're going to lead to telling you got to feel it. They're going to lead to telling you that you have to chase the pump, that you have to have the burn, that you have to do all this stuff, and they're going to lead you astray. So you can't trust guys like that. It really sucks. It's difficult to find a good pair of eyes, but when you find one, keep them around.